I'm not exaggerating when I say I think the story hidden inside this creepy video game may be one of the most important in history. Imagine you make a YouTube video, the beginning of a mystery. It gets 1 million views. Other channels cover it, attempting to piece the puzzle together. Tens of millions of views. And everyone misses the most important clue. What started as a single YouTube video discussing a little-known canceled Nintendo 64 game became a rabbit hole that led me to multiple secret YouTube channels, generations of family drama, developer emails, a dead company, a reborn company, missing people, dead people, and a story whose roots I dug up to find they stretch thousands of years into the past. If you're new to this story, I promise to only cover enough detail for you to grasp the full picture. I won't waste your time, and if you think you've heard this story before, know that I only discuss topics to which I'm confident I can add a new dimension. Like the fact that this low-poly work building is actually an Egyptian Jed pillar, or that the single most important character in this mystery will end up being this teddy bear. Or of course, the clue that literally everyone missed. But those answers will have to wait, because if we're to complete our rescue mission into the underworld, then chaos must be put into proper order. It's time we find out what happened all those years ago. It's time we finally understand the Catastrophe Crow. Our mystery begins in the year 2020, when the filmmaker and YouTuber Adam Butcher uploaded a video titled "What Happened to Crow 64?" The video documents the strange events surrounding the development and eventual cancellation of a 90s Nintendo 64 game called Catastrophe Crow. This game had been teased at game conventions, and people were excited. It looked like it could rival the giant success of Mario 64, and even teased something new
called an eternal revival system. Probably just a bad translation.
In the late 90s, the game was featured in magazines, and it's in one of these magazines where Manfred Lorenz, the lead developer, revealed that the design of the title character was based on a drawing by his daughter Thea. But then, something happened. The game stopped being promoted, never released, and digging into the story of what transpired behind the scenes only left us with more questions than answers. Concerned about the strange assets Lorenz had them put in the game, an employee at Opus Interactive urged Lorenz to think of the player, only for Lorenz to respond, "The player's gone." At some point, Manfred's wife left him. The GameCube released, hammering the final nail in the coffin for the Nintendo 64 game, and Manfred was reported missing. Marta, Manfred's wife, received a bizarre letter where he said he had finally gone home. Then his boat was found, floating in the ocean, unmanned. Whatever this game is or was, it destroyed the life of its developer, and then, like its creator, it vanished. That is until Adam revealed in his video that he found a development prototype of the game just sitting on eBay, so he bought it. His video ends with a playthrough of the game, the first ever public footage of the game since its cancellation, and what he saw was disturbing. The game begins with the text, "He's not been home for days. Maybe he'll talk with you." We're then dropped into a low-poly world like any other of the era. Adam heads into a building labeled Work, where a larger crow is seen in a hurry somewhere. He jumps through a portal into a new level where he finds the large crow quickly typing away at a computer. And when Adam interacts with this crow, its answer appears to be nonsense. Adam is able to clip out of bounds to discover the other crow holding something on a boat before jumping off. And we follow him into the depths, only to find ourselves in a forest. When we find the bigger crow once again, he's crying over a grave. Throughout this gameplay, we're repeatedly subjected to the sound of a phone ringing, and it plays again here, even in the forest. Adam then tries to descend a staircase. The game glitches out of control, and two figures, a scarecrow-like thing and something crawling on the ground emerged from the fog to take us away. Adam respawns in a broken, glitched version of the first level, and behind him, he finds a familiar house. This is Manfred's house. Adam goes inside. Slowly, he passes a chair with a phone off the hook. He ascends a staircase, and finally, he enters a kid's room, where we find a headless crow struggling to breathe. The room fills with water. And then, and that's where Adam's video ends. But here's the thing about Catastrophe Crow. If you ever think the story's over, think again. After this video, the secret was out. You're not putting that genie back in the bottle. The public had heard the story and wanted more, so the internet started doing their own research. Other YouTube channels existed with more footage of the game. People found things in these videos, ciphers, clues. Turns out the Crow language wasn't nonsense, and it appeared in other videos too. You could decode it. People found messages that made little sense without context, but then noticed something. The weird boxes in the startup sequence of the game in Butcher's video. They fit the length of these messages. This could give us an order, so people fit all that had been found into its proper place and realized it was a letter. What was broken and scattered across all of these videos can now be read in full.
Dearest Thea, I'm sorry I could not be with you in the end. I was too afraid. I ran, and now I'm in hell. One I made myself. I dreamed of you playing this one day, but you never will. Please forgive me, my little crow. Please forgive me, both of you. Dad, this is only for your little brother now.
And the highlighted boxes spell out, Dearest Nils, Manfred's son. The public's hunt for answers continued. Why did Manfred's wife leave him? What happened to him? Is he still missing? Is he dead? Eventually, the internet made a huge discovery. Pieces of an email address were hidden across all of the YouTube channels that had footage from this weird game. When combined and messaged, there was a response. Manfred Lorenz. We had contact. Only he wasn't exactly forthcoming with answers. He was guarded. He'd answer some emails, but only when someone impersonated a character from Manfred's life. Say that you're Marta, or claim to be an ex-employee from Opus Interactive. Perhaps you'll get an apology. Tell him that you're Nils. Maybe you'll get a skeptical response, asking you to prove it. This was the only dialogue path that wasn't an immediate dead end. But no one knew how to prove it, because no one emailing Manfred was actually Nils. Everyone was a YouTube viewer that just wanted more information, so we pestered him, probing for whichever combination of words gave us what we wanted. We'll make up birth dates, guilt him, try to trick him into revealing something. Nothing worked. Manfred answered one of the emails by telling Nils to meet him where they used to vacation, and then silence. More emails, no answer. We continued to try and reach out, but no one picked up. Finally, Manfred sent his last email. This is all there was, and the trail went cold. And then, out of nowhere, a familiar face released a new video. Adam Butcher began teasing something Crow-related, along with a new YouTube channel called Opus Legacy. It turns out the success of Adam's original video put something in motion. Opus Interactive was back, but now it was calling itself Opus Legacy. The teasers were for a Catastrophe Crow plush that, if purchased, would fund a full release of Catastrophe Crow. The campaign met its goal, and on April 26, 2024, the finished game was posted to itch.io for free. Finally, the entirety of Catastrophe Crow was available to the public. What was this game? What had driven its creator insane? What were the strange assets that frightened the Opus employees? What was the eternal revival system? What was the supposed villain of the game, Sir Cat? The answers were at our fingertips. The game started with a new message waiting to be uncovered. Players immediately went to work, literally, and found it to be a hub world that could transport you to different levels. Each level hid a code that, when deciphered, presented you with a piece of this new letter. Once completed, it reads like a strange kind of response from Nils to Manfred.
Father, I was so angry. I could not reach you with the claws you gave me. Every year, you drowned. We ran and ran, but could not escape that silent house. In the end, your little crows were only made as playthings to call you back once more. But now, you've died twice. lost in the noise, so I build my own. I learn your language to warm the hell you built from the depths.
If you found the secret tunnel to the giant computer underneath the work building and typed in this entire message, you get the ending cutscene. Floating crows, a hospital hallway, broken geometry, a new family, a bridge loading in, and finally, a thank you message. One of those random YouTube channels uploaded a final video titled The End. This was the last thing we got, and it definitely felt like an ending, some kind of conclusion intended to put a button on a story. But what was the story? What just happened? People needed closure, so they began analyzing all the strange clues and moments, attempting to piece a narrative together, as did I. And I noticed something. What felt like a presence, always watching, but just out of reach. Something was here, obvious enough to know that it was intentionally included, but elusive enough to have to seriously work to put the pieces together. Well, I was ready to do the work, and now I'm here to tell you what I found. To wrap our heads around the full story, we'll need a plan of attack. We'll start with the original set of videos and emails before the 3-year gap. A solid understanding of that first chapter will be necessary before we move on to the ending. Next, we'll tackle the second big release, the game, and unpack what we can. After that, a surprise, a breakthrough that will help us in the end. Finally, the clue that everyone missed, the truth about the Eternal Revival System. Ready? It's clear from Manfred's in-game message to Thea that she was the intended player of the game. Obviously, Opus Interactive was going to release this game to the public, but Manfred was heavily inspired by his daughter. In fact, his whole family is in the game. Manfred is the larger crow that shares the same glasses. Thea is the bandaged crow based on her drawing, and by process of elimination we can derive that the other small crow must be Nils, and the final crow is Marta. Manfred was most excited for Thea to play the game she helped inspire. But she didn't make it. Something happened. She died. Is seen in-game working hard and ignoring his phone. A call that's coming from inside his own home. A caller we see in a brief flash here, the Scarecrow. The call that his daughter had lost the battle. The call that finally pulled him away from work. He couldn't be with her in the end, out of fear of facing her declining health and his wife. And instead, he threw himself into his work. He hoped to get it done before she died, but didn't make it in time. The death of his eldest child sent Manfred on a spiral. He began altering things in the game to turn it into some kind of weird autobiography for his own life. He needed to say why he did what he did, his side of the story, his perspective. Like this moment, when Thea, the bandaged crow, falls down a staircase and 2 very specific individuals take her away from Manfred. The Scarecrow, the real-world nemesis to the crow, or Manfred's wife, and the Crawler, who resembles the Scarecrow, but walks on all 4s. A toddler who takes after his mother, Manfred's son, Nils. Manfred insists that the non-stop work on this game wasn't a fun escape for him like his wife had accused. And then the end. But this is where Manfred's story comes apart. Because if he jumped into the ocean and presumably died, how is he sending emails? Is he haunting the game and the internet? In his email to Nils, he tells his son to meet him where they used to vacation. How can Manfred meet him anywhere if he's dead? By the time Adam's video released, Nils had grown up. The virality of Adam's documentary gave Nils an idea. He started Opus Legacy, a successor to Opus Interactive, and used the interest in his father's story to do the plushie campaign that funded the game. If the letter in the game from Nils wasn't proof of this enough, that Nils is now in charge. Pressing M on the computer fills the work building with models of the Crawler. Clearly, he is or was angry with his father, and learning your language is most likely referring to developing a game and communicating through the art. After all, he can't just email his father anymore. We ruined that avenue. So what is Nils trying to do or say with this game? One of Nils's most important additions was the inclusion of the original villain of the game. Design documents hint at something called Sir Cat, a villain we can meet in the full release a villain who utters 6 letters we can't read and multiplies until the game crashes. In Butcher's original video, he falls down a flight of stairs, and when the game glitches, we catch a glimpse of brain scans. But not just any kind of brain, a brain with cancer. The villain of this game is a cat because it was a CT scan that tore this family apart. A CAT scan. A CAT scan that revealed Thea had brain cancer. That's why the cat head utters a 6-letter word that's too horrible to show. That's why the cat is a fleshy texture and multiplies until the game dies. That's the catastrophe. The catalyst that set all of this in motion. A CAT scan that was done after Thea fainted atop a staircase, fell, and broke her arm. Nils was an adult now, far enough away from the tragedy that started it all to be able to finally include this metaphor in the game. And this is something most investigations of this series quickly understood. But I still had questions. What did Nils mean when he said, "Now you've died twice"? And what is the deal with this teddy bear that keeps showing up everywhere? Sometimes our quests to understand these video game mysteries only move in one direction, but as the advent of 3D games taught us, sometimes what's behind you is far more interesting. For example, we look at a character in the game and say, who does this represent in real life? Is the bandaged crow Thea? Is the larger crow Manfred? But sometimes, if that's all we do, we miss a big part of the picture. With a game like Catastrophe Crow, it's important that we also move in the other direction and ask, who does Manfred represent in the higher plane of existence? Who is he mythologically in the realm where gods reside? In my investigation, I noticed something. The most interesting looking level, a sci-fi pyramid, was missing from the full release. To me, this was the most different, exciting looking level, and yet it wasn't explorable. The clips from old playthroughs and magazine images were all I had. In these clips, you can see Egyptian hieroglyphs, a sun disk, bird, and Ankh that roughly translate to something like "May Ra live," and also a few other scattered symbols. There's water, an obviously important theme in this story, and an eye. Originally, in my notes, I had this described as the Eye of Ra, but I was mistaken. Ancient Egypt actually had 2 eye symbols of great importance that shared a similar design. Only one was the right eye, and one was the left. This was the left eye, the Eye of Horus. This is a very small but very intentional inclusion. See, Horus was a hero, represented with the head of a bird. He also symbolized the moon, a reference to another cut level from the game. And Horus had to rescue his father Osiris from the underworld. The underworld, which across many religions and mythologies is often symbolized by water. The discovery of the Eye of Horus symbol blew my mind. Surely these connections were only coincidental. Surely there couldn't be more. In an attempt to prove to myself that I was reading too much into things, I made what I thought would be my final internet search on this topic, constructed carefully to strengthen or sever this connection. I opened my internet browser and typed Osiris didn't just die twice. The first time he was thrown into the Nile, and the second time his willful blindness led him to being split into pieces, lost in the noise. He was butchered. That's when I got it. All of the pieces suddenly clicked for me. The full story of Catastrophe Crow. Manfred Lorenz, a German game developer, discovered his daughter Thea had brain cancer after she fainted, fell down a staircase in their home, and broke her arm. The cancer couldn't be stopped, and she didn't have much time left. Manfred threw himself into his work. His justification was the game was a present for Thea, and he wanted her to get to play before the end, but it wasn't done in time. His wife Marta called and called, and when he finally answered, he got the worst news a parent could ever hear. She was gone. Manfred lost his mind. His wife left him and took their son Nils away from him. Bitter, Manfred kept working on the game and began thinking of it as his magnum opus. A dangerous thought. Any artist who's experienced analysis paralysis knows seeking perfection means the product will never be done. The game needed to function as an allegory for his life. He needed to explain his decisions. After all, it was for his son now. Nils, whose mind would likely be poisoned by his mother, needed to understand why his father did what he did. The changes disturbed the Opus employees. Opus shut down, the debt collectors came, and there was only one thing left for Manfred to do. Marta told Nils that his father was dead. Decades later, Adam Butcher makes his documentary. He includes a photo of Manfred's letter to Marta, a letter that includes a strange string of numbers. A string of numbers that, as shown in this cutscene, caused Nils to have a breakdown. Because when you put these numbers into the cipher hidden in one of those other YouTube channels, you get a message. The truth that Marta wouldn't tell her son. The truth that needed to be hidden for Nils to find. The truth that reads, "Nils, I'm alive." The plan was to end his life. That's why Manfred put this scene in the game. That's why his boat was found floating in the ocean, but he couldn't do it. The will to live was too strong. The game on eBay, the YouTube channels with secret messages, the only person with access to these things is the father trying to reach the son that was taken from him. The only child he has left, Manfred Lorenz. Symbolically, Manfred's first death was dumping his development hardware into the ocean. He continued to try and reach his son to get past Marta's defenses, but then Adam's video came out. Manfred's inbox was overwhelmed by us, the audience, impersonating this man's son, and he sent his final message, a pyramid tomb. This is Manfred finally giving up on reaching his son, because we made it impossible. This is his second death. Nils had his own family now. This realization that his father was still out there somewhere was shocking and conflicting, but the promise of answers was too good to ignore, so he restarted the company. In a hidden level inside the game, we can find pawns, the Opus employees, building out the new game, and robot pawns, likely robotic submersible equipment, fishing pieces of the original hardware that was sealed in a trunk, like Osiris's body, out of the ocean. It's no coincidence that the work building is modeled after an Egyptian jed pillar, the symbol of Osiris's backbone and stability. Nils hated everything that had to do with his father, but he swallowed his pride and rebuilt the thing that provided for his family all those years ago. Only, it wasn't just rage that motivated him. After you type the entire message hidden across Nils's game, you briefly reveal a final line of his letter to his father.
Not forgiving, but willing to take one last leap.
Nils is going to work to try to reconnect. In Manfred's version of the game, there's a message at the start.
He's not been home for days. Maybe he'll talk with you.
It's important to remember that Manfred put this in the game, but it's intended for Nils. Manfred threw himself so deeply into his job during Thea's battle and after that he didn't know how to come home. After his wife left him, he took his boat out, was briefly reported missing, and Marta told Nils his father was dead. She couldn't forgive him. But if we know he was alive, where did Manfred go? He already told us. He finally did what his wife begged of him. He finally went home. Manfred's letter to Marta is confusing because it says he's gone home and not come home. But that's only because his family isn't there anymore. There was no one to come home to. In his struggle to deal with the loss of his daughter, Manfred lost his whole family. Maybe that's what this means. It's a pyramid because his house looks like a pyramid, because his house can be found in a desert in-game. Maybe the symbols don't mean may Ra live. Maybe the sun is just a homophone for sun. The bird is Thea and the Ankh is shaped exactly like the scarecrow. It's Marta. He's put these symbols on the pyramid to represent needing his family home. When I said you hadn't heard this story before, I wasn't exactly telling the truth, because the story of Catastrophe Crow is an ancient story that persists throughout history. It's inevitable, destined to be retold, because it's more than a story. It's part of the pattern of reality. It's renewal. I'll let Adam, once again, tell you the clue that everyone missed in his original video.
And something groundbreaking called an eternal revival system. Probably just a bad translation.
The Eternal Revival System is a bad translation. The series is about an eternal system of renewal. That's why it includes the Eye of Horus, the symbol for renewal. The story of Catastrophe Crow is the story of renewing a legacy, a business, and a family. It's the story of Horus, and it's Nils' story. Osiris was willfully blind, and it caused him to be split into pieces. But Horus could see. Nils saw his sister die. He saw his father's mistakes tear his family apart. He saw his mother's refusal to forgive, and he chose to rise above both of them. One of Manfred's channels posted a video called The End, but there's more to the video than I previously showed you. Manfred uploaded this video symbolizing him and his son meeting in the place they used to vacation, letting us know they got another chance at closure. That's the story of Catastrophe Crow. It's about rescuing the good from your ancestors. Of course, they made mistakes, but they also built wonders. They made you. We can't punish people for their mistakes forever like Marta. We can't leave them in the underworld, in hell. If they ever see the error of their ways, if they're sorry, we must be willing to take a leap and reconnect. This entire story was weaved brilliantly from the mind of Adam Butcher and was such a pleasure to unravel. But there is a character he included that most forget or ignore. It's the teddy bear. It's the viewer. You played a part in this story. You watched the video. You, the audience, became invested. We sometimes made mistakes, but in the end, we redeemed ourselves. The teddy bear, the audience, is the key. Only through our act of redeeming ourselves was Nils able to complete his mission. How did we redeem ourselves? Through the plushie campaign. We bridged the gap that allowed Nils to free Manfred from his hell. And I think all of this might have been Adam's intention with this story. He constructed a story in a way that included the audience as a character, one that even had a complete arc. Thanks to you, a father can make amends with his son. A son gets another chance with his father. And some little crows will finally get to meet their granddad. I'm Pheyden. Thanks for watching.